What if the thing holding your life back isn't your past, isn't your circumstances, isn't other people, but you? Not in a harsh way, not in a blame yourself way, but in a quiet, uncomfortable truth that you've been avoiding. Because think about it. How many times have you said, I just need a better plan. I just need more motivation. I just need the right moment. But deep down, you already knew what needed to be done. You just didn't do it. And that gap between knowing and doing, that's where your life is slipping. Slowly, silently, every single day. Now here's the part that hits hard. You're not stuck because you don't know enough. You're stuck because you keep choosing what's easy over what actually moves your life forward. And yeah, that's not fun to admit. But stay with me, because this is where everything begins. Not with a new strategy, not with another goal, but with one realization. I am the problem. Now wait, don't push that away, because this next part matters even more. I am also the solution. And when those two ideas exist together, something powerful happens. You stop waiting. You stop blaming. You stop hoping things magically change, and you start looking inward. Now let me ask you something. If you removed every excuse, every distraction, every external factor, what's left? Just you, your choices, your habits, your patterns. And that's where it gets real. Because once it's just you can't hide anymore. Now here's where most people feel resistance. They hear this and think, so it's all my fault? No, it's not about fault. It's about control. Because if everything is someone else's fault, you have no power. But if it starts with you, it can also change with you. Now pause for a second. Which one feels more empowering? Blaming everything outside you, or realizing you can actually do something about it? Be honest, because that answer, that's the direction your life goes. Now here's something most people won't admit. They say they want control, but when it comes, they don't like the responsibility that comes with it. Because control means you don't get to hide behind excuses anymore. And that's uncomfortable. Now this next part, this is where it gets deeper. Because being the problem doesn't mean you're broken. It means your current patterns are not working. That's it. Patterns can change, habits can change, thinking can change, but only if you're willing to see them clearly. And that's where most people stop. They distract themselves. They avoid the truth. They keep themselves busy, just enough to never sit still and think. Now let me ask you something. When was the last time you were completely honest with yourself? No filters, no excuses, no, it's not that bad. Just truth. Because that moment, that's where transformation starts. Now here's the part nobody tells you. Awareness is uncomfortable. Because once you see your patterns, you can't unsee them. You notice how often you delay, how often you escape, how often you choose comfort over growth. And it stings a little. Good. Because that feeling, that's the beginning of change. Now think about this. What if your biggest problem is also your biggest opportunity? What if the reason you feel stuck is because you're standing right at the edge of change, but keep stepping back? Now this next part, this is where things shift. Because once you accept, I am the problem, you unlock something most people never reach. Ownership. And ownership changes everything. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what am I doing that's creating this? That question? It's powerful, because it gives you something most people don't have. Leverage. Now here's the real shift. You're not trying to fix your life all at once. You're just trying to understand what's actually happening inside you. Your reactions, your habits, your thoughts. Because once you understand those, you can start changing them. Slowly, intentionally. Now pause. Is this making sense, or are you still resisting it a little? Either way, that tension you feel, that's where growth lives. And this next part, this is where everything starts to unfold. Because once you see the truth, you face a choice. Stay the same, or step into something uncomfortable. Because stepping into something uncomfortable means letting go of the version of you that feels familiar, even if that version is holding you back. And this is where it gets tricky, because your old patterns, they don't feel wrong. They feel normal. They feel like you. That's why you defend them. That's why you justify them. That's why you keep repeating them. Now here's the realization that changes everything. You're not your habits. You're not your past decisions. You're not even your current behavior. You're the one choosing them. And if you're choosing them, you can choose differently. But this is where resistance shows up, because choosing differently feels unnatural at first, awkward, forced, like you're pretending to be someone you're not. Now pause for a second. Have you ever tried to change and felt like a fraud? Like, this isn't me. This won't last. I'll just go back anyway. Be honest, because that thought stops most people before they even begin. But here's the truth. That discomfort, it's not a sign you're fake. It's a sign you're unfamiliar. You're stepping into a version of yourself you haven't practiced yet. Of course it feels strange. Now this next part, this is where things shift. Because instead of asking, why does this feel uncomfortable? You start asking, what if this is exactly how change is supposed to feel? Because it is. Growth doesn't feel natural. It feels like resistance. Now here's the mistake most people make. They interpret discomfort as a signal to stop. But it's actually a signal you're doing something different, something new, something that might actually move your life forward. Now let me ask you something. What if every time you felt like quitting, you were actually getting closer to change? Think about that. Because most people quit right before things start to shift. Now this is where awareness turns into action. You start catching yourself, mid-pattern, about to delay, about to avoid, about to fall back into what's easy. And in that moment, you pause. Just for a second. And that pause, that's everything. Because in that pause, you break the automatic loop. Now you have a choice. Old version or new version. And yeah, the old version feels easier, faster, more comfortable. But the new version, it builds something. Respect. Now here's a quiet truth. You don't hate yourself because you fail. You hate yourself because you don't try when you know you should. That's what hurts. That's what lingers. That's what builds regret. Now think about this. How different would your life feel if you simply did the things you said you would do? Not perfectly, not all at once, just consistently. Because that's the gap. Not knowledge, not ability, execution. Now this next part, this is where it gets real. Because once you start choosing differently, you're going to face something unexpected. Fatigue. Not physical, mental. Because thinking differently, acting differently, holding yourself accountable, it takes energy. And your brain, it wants to conserve that energy, so it pushes back. It tells you, this is too much. This isn't sustainable. Just go back to what's easy. Now here's the question. Do you listen? Or do you push through? Not aggressively, not emotionally, just calmly continue. Because that calm consistency, that's what rewires you. Now here's something most people won't admit. They don't fail because it's too hard. They fail because they stop too soon. Now pause. How many times have you started something and quit before it had a chance to work? Really think about it. Because that pattern is more common than you think. And breaking it, that's where everything changes. Now here's the shift. You stop focusing on results and start focusing on identity. Not, What am I achieving? But who am I becoming? Because results take time. Identity builds daily. Now imagine this. You wake up, and instead of asking, "What do I feel like doing?" you ask, "What does the person I'm becoming do today?" That question alone changes your decisions. Now this next part, this is where things get deeper. Because once you start building a new identity, you realize something. You're not fighting the world. You're not fighting your situation. You're facing yourself. And that's the hardest battle, but also the most important one. Because once you start winning that, everything outside you starts to shift too. And this next part, this is where most people either level up or fall back. Because right here, this is where it gets uncomfortable in a different way. Not the kind of discomfort that comes from starting, but the kind that comes from continuing. Showing up again, and again, and again. Even when nothing feels different yet. Even when results are invisible. Even when part of you whispers, "This isn't working." Now pause. Have you ever been consistent for a few days, maybe even a week, and then suddenly stopped? Not because you had to, but because you felt like it wasn't enough, like it didn't matter. Be honest, because this is where most people fall off. Not at the beginning, but in the middle. That quiet space where effort hasn't turned into results yet, and doubt starts getting louder. Now here's the truth nobody tells you. The middle? That's where your identity is being tested. Not your skill, not your plan, your identity. Because in the beginning, motivation carries you. It feels new, exciting. But that fades. It always does. And what's left? Just you. Your discipline. Your standards. Now this next part, this is where it hits hard. Because when motivation disappears, you meet your real self. The one who makes decisions without hype, without emotion, without urgency. Just choice. Now let me ask you something. Who are you when nobody's watching and nothing feels exciting? That version of you? That's the one shaping your future. Now here's where people get it wrong. They think consistency means intensity, going all in, pushing hard, doing everything perfectly. But that's not sustainable. Consistency isn't about doing more. It's about doing what matters, even when you don't feel like it. Now here's a realization. You don't need to win every day. You just need to not disappear. Read that again. Because most people don't fail. They vanish. They stop showing up. They break the pattern. And once the pattern breaks, starting again feels harder. Now this next part, this is where it gets real. Because the moment you feel like stopping, that's the moment that matters most. Not when it's easy, not when it's exciting, but when it's boring, repetitive, uncomfortable. That's where identity is built. Now here's something most people won't admit. They don't quit because it's hard. They quit because it's boring. No dopamine, no instant reward, just effort. Now think about it. Can you stay consistent without needing immediate results? Can you keep going when nobody notices? Can you trust the process when nothing is guaranteed? Don't answer quickly, because this question separates who changes from who stays the same. Now this is where it shifts. You stop chasing motivation and start building standards, non-negotiables, things you do no matter what. Not because you feel like it, but because that's who you are now. Now imagine this. You don't debate with yourself anymore. You don't negotiate. You don't overthink. You just act. Calmly. Consistently. And that simplicity? That's power. Now here's a thought. What if your life doesn't change because you keep negotiating with yourself? I'll do it later. I'll start tomorrow. I'll skip today. Those small negotiations, they cost you everything. Now pause. Which one are you right now? Someone who negotiates or someone who executes? You already know. And that knowing? That's uncomfortable for a reason. Now here's where things get deeper. Because even if you build consistency, even if you stop quitting, there's still one thing that can pull you back. Something subtle, something quiet, something most people don't even notice. And when it hits, it feels justified. It feels reasonable, but it resets everything. And this next part, this is where everything either locks in or falls apart. That thing is self-deception. Not obvious lies, not big excuses, small ones, quiet ones, the kind that sound reasonable. This isn't the right time. I'll do it when I feel better. I just need a break. And sometimes those things are true. But most of the time, they're just softer versions of quitting. Now here's the problem. Self-deception doesn't feel like failure. It feels like logic. That's why it's dangerous. Because you don't question it, you accept it. And once you accept it, you act on it. And just like that, you slip. Not dramatically, not all at once, just a little. And then again and again, until you're right back where you started. Now pause. How many times has this happened without you even noticing? Because this is the pattern. You start strong, you build momentum, you feel different, and then you slowly convince yourself to stop. Not because you can't continue, but because you talked yourself out of it. Now here's the truth. Your biggest obstacle isn't discipline. It's the voice in your head that justifies staying the same. And that voice, it sounds like you. That's why it works. Now this next part, this is where everything changes. Because once you recognize that voice, you stop trusting it blindly. You question it. You pause. And in that pause, you create separation between you and your impulses. Now imagine this. That voice says, skip today. Old version listens. New version notices and asks one simple question. Is this truth or comfort? That question alone breaks the pattern. Now here's a realization. You don't need to eliminate that voice. You just need to stop obeying it. Because it will always be there, always. But it doesn't get to decide your actions anymore. Now this is where identity becomes permanent. Not because you're perfect, but because you're aware. You see the patterns, you see the excuses, you see the moments where you used to slip. And instead of falling into them, you step around them, calmly, quietly, without drama. Now let me ask you something. What would your life look like if you simply stopped lying to yourself? Not completely, not perfectly, just a little more honest every single day. Because that honesty, it compounds, just like your old habits did. Now here's the shift. You're no longer trying to be perfect. You're trying to be real. Real with your effort, real with your decisions, real with your standards. And that changes everything. Now imagine this version of you. You don't overpromise. You don't overthink. You don't escape. You see what needs to be done, and you handle it, even when it's uncomfortable.
especially when it's uncomfortable. That's control. Not controlling everything around you, but controlling how you respond. Now here's the final realization. You were never waiting for the right moment. You were waiting to become the person who takes action regardless of the moment. And now, you're stepping into that. Not all at once, not perfectly, but intentionally. Now pause. Does this feel different? Not exciting, not overwhelming, just clear. Because clarity is what you've been missing. Not motivation, not energy. Clarity. Now here's the truth you can't unsee anymore. You are the problem. In your patterns, in your habits, in your choices. But you are also the solution. In your awareness, in your decisions, in your actions. And once you accept both, you stop feeling stuck. Because you finally understand something powerful. Nothing changes until you do. And everything changes when you do. So here's the question. What are you going to do with this awareness? Ignore it, delay it, or act on it? Because this moment, right here, this is where your life starts shifting. Not tomorrow, not next week. Right now. And if this hits something real in you, don't just move on. Stay with it. Think about it. Act on it. Because most people don't get this level of clarity. And the ones who do, but ignore it, end up right back where they started. Don't be that person. Be the one who sees it and does something about it. And if you want more of this, more clarity, more control, more truth, stay close to it. Subscribe and start becoming someone you don't have to escape from anymore.